So this video is for anybody who's considering or coming to Japan to look or sell Pokemon cards. Now, 2 years ago, now it's March 2024 as I'm making this video. So 2 years ago to now, things are a little bit more complicated or open, whichever way you want to look at it. Let's start with raw cards. Now, some Japanese cards which have gone overseas and been opened, and you try to sell them overseas, will get less money than they do in Japan. And I would say Charizard cards are a very good example. Like the 25th anniversary Charizard card raw in the US or Europe will sell for about 1.5 times more expensive in Japan than it does outside. And I'm talking about raw cards, not graded, okay? Now, where you need to be a little bit careful is if you come to Japan to sell cards, a few shops will take passports. And we're talking about, for example, if you're in Akihabara and in a 1 mile radius you have 40 shops, we're talking about 3 shops as we speak today, March 2024. Okay? But if you go to the countryside, or you go to Osaka, or you go to Kyoto, you might be talking about one shop. But if you go to the countryside, forget it. Game over. They will ask you for an ID which has a residency in Japan, driving license, or what we say a Gaikoku residence card, like a foreigner's residence alien card. Okay, I'm an alien. Okay, not in New York, in Tokyo. Okay, anyone who knows that reference. But anyway, so you basically need to have an ID to sell to everywhere. Okay, and if you sell to the other 3 shops, think about that very carefully. They can determine the price on you because they're the only 3 shops that you can sell to with a passport. So, therefore, if you know someone who's on the ground, you have access to the other 37 shops. If it's Tokyo, as an example. Okay? So, think carefully before you bring your cards to Japan to sell. Don't think it will be a smooth and easy experience, because I know from great experience from many followers from my Instagram account who have come to Tokyo and tried to sell and then sent me an email at the last minute. Can you please come to Akihabara to help me sell these cards? And I might be available or I might not be available. And the other issue is if I sell for somebody else, it goes under my name, and then it's at this point in time not carefully curated for tax purposes, but it could be very shortly. So that also window will close in maybe the next 1 or 2 years, or maybe 3 years, depending on how the spotlight falls on this area. So it's an interesting situation. Then, okay, that's raw cards. Now let's talk about graded cards. Now, when we were talking about 40 shops for the, like, Akihabara general, without going into the side streets and whatever, right? And there was only 3 shops that were selling to, like, people with passports, right? Those 3 shops generally take graded cards as well, because it comes part and parcel with the fact that raw cards and graded cards and foreigners or overseas people will have more access to graded cards. Now, graded cards has only been available as a service in country by PSA since 2023 August, as my understanding is. And there are a few other grading companies coming in this year who's going to do something in Japan, and I can talk about that in another video. I'm not sure exactly what month that is, but I am in communications with those companies about their activities. So I will do an update on that. But let's just talk about PSA, right? So let's just say that there is PSA available since 2023 August for Japanese people to grade with, right? So if you think about that, if you pick up the 40 shops, which are the general shops in Akihabara, only, as I know, right? 3 or 4, maybe 5 shops actually sell PSA slabs, right? And they do have good prices, but they do have a limit on what they buy each day. So if you turn up with like 30 slabs and you just try and, as a foreigner, just try and like sell that through the market, they're gonna say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm done with selling for today," and you have nowhere to go. You have nowhere to go. If they don't take your passport, whatever, you're done, right? So again, think carefully. If you know someone in Japan, go with them. You can go to other shops or whatever. And I'll be honest with you, if you have a Japanese residency and you try to sell over the fact that you have a foreign passport and you try to sell, it most likely will have a little bit easier pathway to get that sale completed. However, sales of credit cards are increasing. So I would say over the next 1 year to 1.5 years, those 3 to 5 shops will turn into 15 shops. The resistance within Japanese card shops is the retail space and the inflexibility on buying prices of those cards. So let me break that down. So for example, you can display, and I haven't done any measurements here, so don't chew me out over this, right? Let's say in a 1 meter slab, you can display like 100 cards, right? For example, you grade those cards and put them in slabs, you can display 40 cards. So you just brought down the real estate of that shop from 100% down to 60% or 40%, whatever it might be, right? So basically, real estate is expensive, especially in Akihabara or for Akihabara or like Ikebukuro. That is expensive. You want to start displaying slabs? That's going to take up 4 times more real estate. And the square footage of the rental of the shop, they are resisting this very strongly. And the second area is when you take your slab to be sold and it's a PSA 10, they can't turn around to you and say, well, they could turn around and say, this slab has a scratch on it if it's really visible, right? But they can't turn around to you and say, yeah, this is a PSA 9. But if you take a raw card, they can say to you, oh, this is not an A plus, this is an A, or this is an A minus, or this is a B plus. So I'm only going to give you this much. Do you know how many shops I've been to and I've taken a card and they said this is a B plus, and then I've taken it to another shop and they said this is an A minus. I've taken it to another shop and they said this is an A plus. And the difference between those prices can be 30%. But with a PSA graded card or a different company graded card, they can't do that. So they don't want to play that game. So there is a massive resistance in the market not to get into that. And so many shops in Akihabara and Ikebukuro will not take graded cards for these 2 reasons, in my opinion. So It will be extremely interesting to see how that goes. But in the interim period, if you're coming to Japan and you're looking to sell your cards, please bear in mind these points. My recommendation is to have a backup foreigner in Japan or a backup Japanese person in Japan who knows the market, who has an ID card, who can sell for you on your behalf, as well as you can sell with your passport, especially for raw cards, okay? And especially for Japanese bulk cards, okay? That's a different video. That is a different video. That's a massive video. But anyway, we'll come back to that. But like I said, think what you got, what you want to sell at, and the availability when you get here. And if you can't sell, have a backup source. You know where I am. But anybody else is also cool. But all I would say is have a backup source. So many people have said, I'm coming, I want to sell, I want to sell, I want to sell, I want to sell, I want to sell. And they get here and then no one wants to buy from them because they don't have a residency card and they can't sell. And then they call me up at the last minute, like about 2 hours before they're leaving or 2 hours before they go home on that day from Tokyo to Kyoto, and they expect me to turn up to Osaka, turn up to Akihabara, and you know, I'm working that day or whatever, right? And it's too late and I can't. And they go to Osaka and it gets even worse because there's nothing down there compared to Akihabara, right? So all I would say is do your research on the shops that will accept passports. Do your research on what prices they're offering you as a foreigner as well against a local person for a graded card, because that can be different as well. A lot different. That's harder to check, but it is a situation as well. So all I would say is today is talking about graded cards, bringing your cards to Japan, bringing your raw cards to Japan, what shops to check, where to go, who to contact, that kind of thing. Drop me a DM. Anybody wants to talk on Instagram or YouTube, happy. But if you want to go on to like Instagram after this, very, very happy to meet with anybody and talk with anybody and do trades or anything like that as well. So thank you very much for watching and bye from Tokyo.